Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fond du Lac Area Women's Fund virtual series, Project Table Talk. I'm Maria Turner, the Executive Director, and I'm joined today by co-facilitator Erin Flood, who is a member of our Board of Directors and is one of the people helping out each time on this particular series. Along with us today are our guests. We have Sarah O'Neill, who is the Elder Abuse Enhanced Training Project Coordinator with the State of Wisconsin Department of Justice, as well as Cheryl Ketterhagen and Jackie Gomez, both adult services workers for Fond du Lac County. Today, we'll be discussing a topic that aligns with our Fond du Lac Says No More initiative here at the Women's Fund related to elder abuse. June is Elder Abuse Awareness Month, so we're in June, and we thought this would be an excellent topic for us to tackle to help educate and bring awareness to what the issue is here in Fond du Lac County, as well as provide resources. So we are pleased to have these ladies with us today, helping us through that as the experts. So with that, let's just get started. Sarah, if you could give our listeners an idea of the definition of what it means when we say elder abuse, what types of activities fall under that definition, and maybe talk a little bit about what your role is at the state level in bringing awareness to the topic of elder abuse.
Sure. So elder abuse and abuse in later life, they're almost one and the same. There is a little difference in their definition, so I'm going to give you both. So abuse in later life is the willful abuse, neglect, abandonment, or financial exploitation of an older adult who is age 50 plus. It's committed by someone in an ongoing trust-based relationship, typically, like a spouse, a partner, a family member, a child, an adult child, a grandchild. Abuse in later life definition calls attention to the nexus between domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, and elder abuse. So then we have elder abuse, and that is a broader term which applies to abuse, neglect, and exploitation of an older adult in a trusting relationship with the offender, but it can include stranger abuse done by a stranger. So when you think of that, you're thinking about the romance scams, you're thinking about the gift card scams, you're thinking about the grandparent scams. So that's where that extra part kind of comes in. It can include harm based on age and disability as well. So someone who may have a cognitive disability or a disability where they cannot care for themselves and need assistance by somebody else. Different forms of abuse could include anything from physical abuse, emotional or psychological abuse, neglect, self-neglect, financial exploitation, and sexual abuse. And then you have that added component of the domestic violence piece, the stalking component, those are not things that we typically think of when we think of older adults, but they do occur, which is why they've been added to it. My role in this topic now with the Department of Justice is the Elder Abuse Enhanced Training Project Coordinator. So my role there, and I'll talk more about this later, is that I help educate professionals as well as educate the community on what elder abuse is, what the signs are, what to look for, and really how to conduct an investigation, how to work with others, how to really pave roads between those silos, right? And when I talk about silos, we think about APS, Adult Protective Services, then we think about law enforcement, and we think about all these other direct service providers, right? They all have their own space. But what we lack sometimes is those connecting roads between all of them. And so my role within this grant is really to help these agencies build their connector roads so that we can continue to keep the doors open for older adults to come forward and report, right? Most older adults do not come forward for lots of different reasons. Statistics really talk about 1 in 10 actually come forward, and I have seen that fluctuate between 1 in 14 or 1 in 24. It just depends on what you're reading and what statistics you see. But you think about an iceberg, right? That 1 in 10, that 1 in 10 is above the water, right? But you have all these other things underneath the water that we don't even see, and it's this gigantic iceberg. So that's what we like to keep in mind when we're looking at how do we help better the system? How do we help older adults be able to come forward so that they can get the help that they need, right? That's my role.
Okay.
Thanks, Sarah. Cheryl and Jackie, I know that you are going to provide us with a little bit more detail about what this looks like specifically in Fond du Lac County. And I'm anxious to not only hear about incidents reported, but the staff that we really have that's available to help support people when they come forward in that process.
Okay, so Jackie and myself are the adult protective service workers for Fond du Lac County. We investigate all the vulnerable adults and elderly cases that come in. And then Angie Liner is also another worker who she does a lot of, wears a lot of different hats, including doing the investigations for the intellectual disabled. So really it comes down to about 2 and however many cases she has come in. But with those, then there's a lot of statistics that I'd like to provide. Starting out with just 2019 and breaking it down, we had 524 contacts in that year with 183 cases that we investigated. So with those investigations, 134 of them were over the age of 60 and 49 were below the age of 60. Going into 2020, we had about another 50 more contacts at 572, but we will be displaying 252 pinwheels this year, meaning we investigated 252 cases of abuse in Fond du Lac County. Of those, 190 were 60 and over, and 62 were under the age of 60. So we had, again, the 69 more victims in a year. And then a really big thing that came into effect in 2020, the state started asking us to keep financial cases because they were becoming so involved. And when you get a financial case, you can work on it for months before you're heading it over to the district attorney or an officer. Jackie and I put spreadsheets together, and sometimes they can be 50, 60, 100 pages. We tie it all up in a nice bow. We give it to the police officer. He takes it up to the DA, and then we get charges pressed. And last year in 2020, we had 43 cases of financial abuse. Of those, 19 of them, we didn't know the amount of money that was taken, or 0 was taken because the banks decided that they knew it was a scam and they weren't going to allow them to have the money. But out of those remaining cases, which was 24 cases, alone in Fond du Lac County, we had $1,098,133 that was taken from 24 victims. And those, many of them are scams, many of them are family members, many of them are caregivers. I don't know if you read or saw, there was a big case that got prosecuted. The woman as a caregiver took $350,000 from an elderly victim. That made headlines, news in Fond du Lac. And then the other thing that is really huge in 2021, 2020 we did, or on average, we do about 6 or 7 what are called emergency protective placements, meaning when someone is so incapable of taking care of themselves, maybe due to a severe medical issue, or they're incompetent with major Alzheimer's dementia, they don't understand the ramifications that they're harming themselves or someone else. We have a law that now, instead of a Chapter 51, which is for mental health, we have that protects for the elderly, and that's a Chapter 55. We typically do 6 or 7 of them a year, and up until May of this year, we've already done 9. which is a huge statistic because we're getting calls and they're emergent, like you guys talked about crises. It's an emergent situation, right, where we're going over, the police are calling us, we're getting them to the hospital. On 2 occasions, I know myself, I was told if we wouldn't have been there in a couple hours, they both would have been deceased. So they're severely neglecting themselves. Family members haven't seen them. And now they're getting out because of COVID, or people are getting into the home because of COVID, finally coming over, and it's really taken a toll on Jackie and I actually this year so far. But if things keep going like they are, it means that we're going to have over 700 contacts this year alone. So.
Well, Cheryl, thank you. You know, the numbers are devastating when they're brought forward the way you're presenting them, in a way that, at least for me, this is the first time I've ever heard these statistics in Fond du Lac County. And also, I guess when I thought of the term elder abuse, I was not thinking in terms of those financial scams. So thank you for that. That's a huge learning just for me. Of course, like sometimes I'm like going, Maria, why wouldn't you have made that connection, right? But so I appreciate that piece of educating just me personally, and hopefully some other people in that realm as well. Also, I can't help but think, you know, obviously COVID, you mentioned COVID, the isolation factor of that, and now the opening up. Just look at this domino effect that I don't think people are realizing, that when that isolation occurs, there's all kinds of things that can happen behind the scenes of all of that. So thank you for sharing that as well. Jackie, now that we have an idea of the scope of the issue here, can you just walk us through a little bit about what a typical investigation would look like, and how Fond du Lac County workers play a role in these types of situations?
Sure. So, I mean, that's kind of a broad question, because all of our investigations are different. You know, it kind of depends on the severity of whoever calls into us, whether it's a family member, you know, a doctor, it could be law enforcement, it could be anybody can call in and report something to us. I guess one of our biggest calls that we get is financial exploitation. So that would look like, you know, if the bank calls us themselves with the concerns, we ask them for financial records right away, to just kind of look at the records and identify where the issues are, if there are any at all. You know, and then definitely get in contact with the victim, making sure they're aware of what's going on, if there is something, you know, and if they're their own decision maker, they can choose not to do anything from there. You know, if we have concerns about cognition, on the other hand, you know, then we could pursue it further, you know, to law enforcement. Like Cheryl was kind of explaining, we create spreadsheets of, you know, all the transactions that are questionable, or, you know, things we feel just something isn't right about, you know, and we get law enforcement involved in those cases, and they look into it further, whether it's, you know, looking at security cameras on ATMs, you know, to see who was taking out money when, you know, things like that. And then, you know, for some of our other cases, you know, as far as abuse, you know, physical abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse, anything like that, it depends again on the severity of the call, but we always make contact with the person. All of our investigations have to start within 24 hours of getting the call, and that could mean just making a phone call if it's a less severe case. You know, we don't physically have to go see the person within 24 hours. We just have to start the investigation. You know, and then our role really is just to keep people safe and assist them wherever they need it, you know, whether that's getting them to a safe place and if they're in a bad situation, or, you know, helping them with whatever they need to. You know, and then it also, as Cheryl mentioned, the emergency protective placements if they're in immediate danger, you know, getting them to the hospital if we need to, and they're all different. So it's hard to kind of pinpoint where an investigation is going to go. We just kind of play it out and see where things go.
I think it's important too to remember that, you know, APS, when they're doing their investigations, they're also getting people connected to other resources in the community, right? I think sometimes Adult Protective Services gets a bad rap in what it is that they do and why they're there and when they show up, but really, oftentimes they're just trying to create relationships with folks in the community and really get them connected. The idea is to keep people in their homes and wherever it is that they are for as long as possible, but also keeping in mind that safety aspect and choice. You know, there's a lot of factors that come into play when APS is going in and conducting an investigation, whether that's due to financial exploitation or they're there for a self-neglect issue or a possible caregiver neglect issue. Either way, they're always keeping in mind the victim, right? And trying to do their best to create a relationship in a very short period of time.
Yeah, thank you both for those comments. I think it's important for people to understand what that investigative process looks like, because I think a lot of times people might sense it in their gut that something's off or no, you know, even beyond that, even have some evidence that someone needs help, but they're afraid to step in because they're not sure about what the process will really look like. And so to be able to understand to Jackie's point, that it can look like a variety of things depending on the severity, but at the very least, it could be just a connection to resources is a really great point. So Sarah, thanks for that follow up.
Can I just add one more thing to that also? Sorry, is that people have to also realize that if you're your own person and making poor choices, you have the right to do that. I can't come into anybody's house because they don't like how they're living. They may be a hoarder, they may be this, they may be that. And that person is competent in making the choice to live like that. That's how they get to live. We can't change that. We're there to assist them. Again, if there's a question of incompetency, if there's a question of someone hurting them and them wanting the assistance, then we can help them and give them the resources that they need. But people have the right in America to make poor choices.
Self-determination.
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important thing to point out, Cheryl. So thank you for adding that. Sarah, just going back to you, I know you're in charge of grants and making sure that now that we've explained how these situations are identified, that there's some grant money or resources going to help either in the prevention or the attention to these situations. So can you just tell us a little bit about that that process and what's currently being done to help with elder abuse?
Sure. So in 2018, Wisconsin received a grant for $1.25 million from the U.S. Department of Justice and the Office of Violence Against Women. We used that money in 4 project sites. So Outagamie County, Door County, the city of Milwaukee, and Oneida Nation. The idea there was to look at urban, rural, and tribal populations. When we have better population representation, it opens the door to potential replication of what it is that we're doing with this grant, which is, you know, we were moving in that direction prior to COVID, and then obviously had to change direction a little bit when that came up. So the grant itself addresses abuse in later life, which I talked about that a little bit earlier. So for those age 50 and older, that's what the grant addresses. And it includes domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, and stalking. It includes those things on top of all those other forms of abuse that we talked about before. So I am the program coordinator in Outagamie County and Door County. We have Mike Austin from the Department of Justice. He is the program coordinator and kind of overseeing the grant itself in the city of Milwaukee. And then we have a program coordinator, Jill, who is in Oneida Nation. So between the three of us, we're working on this grant. We're working with the National Clearinghouse on Abuse in Later Life, or NCAL for short. And our grant communities are working to provide training to criminal justice professionals, government agency staff, and victim assistants to enhance their ability to address this issue regarding elder abuse, neglect, exploitation in their communities. So in those pilot communities. We've also been providing, and we just had our first ones in Outagamie, Dorr, and the city of Milwaukee for cross-training professionals who are working with older adults, so that direct service staff population. We also have developed or enhanced a coordinated community response to elder abuse, so a multidisciplinary team in those pilot communities. We've also provided or enhanced services for victims who are 50 and older by creating 2 victim advocates within the Elder Rights Project here in Wisconsin. So we have a victim advocate through the Elder Rights Project in the Outagamie County area who helps with Outagamie County and Oneida Nation. And then we have another one in the city of Milwaukee who does Milwaukee County. So with the training, we have these key training points that we like to keep in mind anytime we're educating the community or providers or professionals in regards to elder abuse. One is, of course, victim safety. What are their strengths, and are you providing active listening to what their real concerns are, right? 2 would be aware of and avoid any assumptions. And assumptions go both ways. So it's the professional's assumption of the older adult and the older adult's assumption of the professional, right? That goes both ways. And it can significantly impact an investigation when there are assumptions there. So we want to try to keep those at the door if possible. And then recognizing abuser tactics. They can be very manipulative. They lie. And they try really hard to justify their behavior and what it is that they've been doing. What we do know, statistically, 2/3 of perpetrators are family, right? Those intimate relationships that we talked about, sibling, a child, a spouse, a partner, those are the relationships that we're talking about, that 2/3, right? And then working collaboratively, which is where this training and this particular project table talk comes into play. This increases any positive outcome that we could have, and it helps to reduce potential conflicts and unintended consequences or outcomes. So the abuse in later life and the elder abuse cases, they're only becoming more complicated, more complex. They're not able to be worked by one single person or one single agency, right? You heard both Cheryl and Jackie talk about, when they have a financial exploitation case come in, they're working with the bank, they're working with law enforcement, they're working with the district attorney's office, they're communicating with their staff, they're communicating between each other, they're reaching out to other agencies, potentially the Aging and Disability Resource Center, et cetera, et cetera. It takes a village to be able to really work through these cases. And like Cheryl talked about, there's that added part about self-determination, right? And so that's that. I can tell you in Outagamie County, there was not any coordinated community response team prior. So we have actually developed an elder abuse CCR there, and we have 2 subcommittees that we've been able to create there. There's a financial exploitation subcommittee, and that is run by the district attorney's office as well as law enforcement. The idea there is to really work together to create a format for law enforcement when they're gathering all the information, whether it be from APS or their own, when they've received a call themselves from someone about financial exploitation cases, so that when they move it up to the district attorney's office, everything is neat, organized, and ready to go for prosecution. Like, that's the idea there. We also have a hoarding task force that's been developed. Cheryl talked a little bit about this, and it's becoming an ever increasing issue. Hoarding is a multifaceted issue. It's not just one thing. It's not just somebody collecting stuff. There's some mental health component to it, trauma. There's a lot involved. And so there again, it takes multiple agencies to be able to work through cases like that. And that's what we're doing there. Harbor House, which is the domestic violence agency in Outagamie County, has taken on training new staff. They train up and coming RNs, LPNs. They train up and coming law enforcement at the Fox Valley Tech. They're doing a lot there to be able to make sure that the elder abuse component is attached to the domestic violence component, which is fantastic. We have law enforcement officer on our team up there with Appleton Police Department, who is part of the Alzheimer's Association as well. So she's educating staff on the dementia component, which adds a whole nother flavor of things when you're looking at abuse cases. And then we're just continuing our education with law enforcement and direct service staff up there. We have some virtual trainings for law enforcement that have been developed to try to navigate the whole COVID issue and not being able to do in-person trainings. So we have those coming out from NCAL shortly, I think within the next month. Hopefully we should have those. Door County, same thing. We've enhanced the CCR to add the elder abuse component. We have an elder abuse subcommittee up there that is going to be continuing that outreach process and education to the community. Help of Door County, which is the domestic violence shelter up there, and the sexual assault center, both are educating new staff and continue to educate the community as it relates to elder abuse and domestic violence or sexual assault, which is fantastic. We have completed the law enforcement training there. And we just did our first direct service training. So we're doing a lot. This grant is only a 3-year grant. We're actually coming to the end this year, September. I believe we are applying for a no-cost extension to be able to try and get more outreach, more education completed to the communities within these grantee counties. So I'm really hopeful that we're going to be able to do that, and that all of these wonderful things that we're doing, whether it be outreach to other communities, outreach within these communities, that it's going to stick, and that we're just going to continue to grow stronger and stronger and stronger, and that we're going to see those numbers, yes, probably grow, but grow for good reason, because they're coming in and they're getting help, right? That's my hope with that. That's my role right now with this grant.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. It's good to hear, especially after the statistics that we heard, that there's so much going on in the form of just education and helping people that are in real life situations every day, interacting, be able to have the skills and the awareness necessary to identify and be able to jump in and help someone. So I'm hoping that you get your extension as well, because it sounds like really great and really impactful work.
Yeah, I mean, we talk, there are a lot of statistics out there, and Cheryl could give you 1 million, Jackie could give you 1 million, and I could too. Cheryl talked about the dollar amount of financial exploitation cases in Fond du Lac County in 2020. Statewide, I think it's like close to 30 million. I think it's between 26 and 29. And that's not even with all of the counties reporting at the time when we received the information. Cheryl, do you have the exact number?
I don't, but I think that's only like 27 counties.
Yeah.
Wow.
Out of, I think we have what, 72 counties?
72.
Yeah. So it could potentially be double that.
Yeah.
It could potentially be double that. That's where we're at just in Wisconsin. This is an issue that just is not increasing statewide, it's increasing nationwide and globally.
Yeah, well, and just to go back to your point too, the isolation did a lot of things that we probably anticipated it would do, but now seeing the numbers really, it's hard. It's a hard thing to accept, all the things that came about as consequences of COVID and the last year and a half of our lives. So,
yeah.
Cheryl, if somebody is watching right now and says, I suspect that someone I love needs some help, what's the first step they should take?
They can call the Aging and Disability Resource Center here in Fond du Lac, and that number is 920-929-3466. And we're open between the hours of 8 and 4:30. We do have an answering machine you can leave, but if it's an emergency, please just call the police. And the police are gonna do what is needed to help them out after hours, and then they'll be in touch with us in the morning. If it's an emergency during the day and they still call the police are gonna call us also. We've gone out to them. If there's a police officer on the phone, one of us is going out on the call. They want us there. So again, you can call the police or the Aging and Disability at 929-3462 or 66, sorry.
Excellent. Thank you for that resource in terms of the phone number. That's always super helpful. And, you know, one of the things that stands out to me in talking to those of you who are working to respond to some of these abuse calls that come in is the interaction that you have with the police department. I don't think again, that the general public always makes that connection that police are working so collaboratively with other agencies, whether that be on the county level, on the state level, domestic violence shelters, you know, nonprofit. The police officers are critical in just so much of the work in offsetting abuse of all forms, whether that's child abuse, whether that's responding to a sexual assault allegation, or any of these elder abuse suspicions. So, you know, I just want to call that out, you know, because it speaks volumes to the collaborative nature of your department with police officers, with nonprofit agencies. And I think people forget that. They pay their tax bills and they're sometimes disgruntled by that, but look at what we get.
Yes.
What are we getting for that? True value, in my opinion. And so thank you for that work that you're doing. Thank you for that collaboration. That's awesome. So
And I'm
Jackie,
just going to throw in the collaboration part again. I'm sorry, but we have what is called an ITeam or interdisciplinary team. And in Fond du Lac County, ours is one of the biggest in the state. And we have like 45 people that are on it, or members that are on it. And that includes the banks, officers from all different areas. It includes domestic violence, it includes the hospital case managers. Jackie, you can add in more. I mean, we have a huge ITeam.
yeah, Jackie, just real quick here, we're getting close on time, so I'm trying to keep us on track. So tell us a little bit about ITeam, but also maybe they're planning something for June as Elder Abuse Awareness Month. What does Fond du Lac County do in terms of bringing awareness through the county? Do you have an event? Is there something else you're doing? There was mention of pinwheels. Let's hear it.
Yeah, so every year we set up a pinwheel representation at the Fond du Lac Veterans Park, which is right across from the City County building on South Main and 4th. It's right on the corner there. This year, you know, since in 2020 we investigated 252 cases, we're going to have 252 pinwheels representing all of our cases that we investigated in 2020. With that, we're also doing additional representations starting this year at some of the police stations located, you know, within our county, you know, Ripon, North Fond du Lac, City of Fond du Lac, Campbellsport, Brandon, Waupun, probably missing a few, but yeah, we're going to have a wider representation this year. You know, and it's the pinwheels, and then we have two like yard signs that we put out as well, just, you know, kind of with our phone or the ADRC phone number, who to call, you know, if somebody's suspecting elder abuse.
Okay, well, you know, that 30 minutes always goes so quickly. Every time I'm on here with Erin and sometimes with Kyle, we're just amazed at how quickly it goes and how much longer any topic that we're covering. But hopefully we've been able to lend some insights into the basics, what people need to know as far as the scope of this issue here in Fond du Lac County and statewide, and as well as how they can get help if they need it. So I appreciate all of you coming today to help educate us and our watchers, and for the work you do. Sincerely, I have so much respect for individuals that can go into these crisis situations and bring the chaos down to a level that's manageable. And so you all do that on a regular basis, and I appreciate that so much. So ends this edition of Project Table Talk. I'm so thankful to our guests, Sarah, Cheryl, and Jackie, as well as all of you who are tuning in today. We'll see you again at 1 p.m. on Thursday, June 24th. For a little bit of fun. We have our Power of the Purse annual event that day. We will be filming live from there. If you haven't gotten tickets, please go on our website, fdlwomensfund.com, and grab some tickets. But if you can't be there, you'll see us live doing our next Project Table Talk on June 24th. See you soon.
Fantastic.